best music and the best talk.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program do not necessarily reflect that of radio station WVLT, Clear Communications Incorporated, its staff and management, or our sponsors. WVLT, Clear Communications Incorporated, retains the right to record all phone calls received during this program for future promotions.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Inform the Vote NJ Radio Hour here on Cruisin' 92.1 WVLT in Vineland. My name's Steven Solov. And if you're tuning in for the first time, I want to take a moment to share why we're here, why tonight's episode matters, and why this conversation may feel a little different from my usual approach. This project started with what seemed like a simple question. Who are the people asking for my vote, and what do they actually stand for? Like many of you, I opened my ballot expecting at least some reference to where I could learn about the candidates. But there was no link, no website, no guide. So I did what any curious voter would do. I started Googling. That quick search turned into a rabbit hole that lasted weeks. I called phone numbers, sent emails that often bounced back, mailed letters, scrolled through half-abandoned Facebook pages, and realized our local newspaper, the Vineland Daily Journal, was effectively gone. With some guidance from Mayor Finucci, I landed in what you could call my first week of real immersion in Cumberland County politics. I found the party websites, which offered short bios and broad talking points, essentially slightly elaborated campaign mailers. Then I showed up at a bi-weekly Republican breakfast and later stopped by Deerfield Day, where I was surrounded by an overwhelming flood of information. Some candidates were warm and willing to talk specifics. Others seemed cautious and suspicious. And when I asked one Democratic candidate how to find out about future events, he said, "We just kind of wing it. We text each other and show up." Even now, the County Democrats website still doesn't reliably list events. I literally checked again while preparing this report this afternoon. All of this drove home that there's still a big gap between what an average voter should easily find from a neutral source and what you have to do if you really want to be informed. Treat it like a part-time job, or maybe even a full-time job. To be fair, I've seen the Cumberland GOP make noticeable efforts to improve outreach. They're more active on social media, they've put newsletters out at events like the Lawrence Township Meet and Greet, and more officials are showing up consistently. That's progress. But most of it assumes you're already at least somewhat tapped in. You have to follow the right pages, assuming you use social media at all, and know which events to attend. That's why I keep coming back to this. Citizens absolutely should do a reasonable amount of homework before voting. But we can't expect everybody to piece together a year-round scavenger hunt. Somebody should be doing a professional level centralized information service so people can get up to speed efficiently. Fast forward to today, many of these challenges still persist. Take our guest tonight, Assemblyman McClellan. His campaign materials provide helpful background, his resume, committees, and broad goals. But they don't always offer the clarity voters need to understand where he stands on complex issues. And on the Democrat side, the challengers Carolyn Rush and Carol Sabo aren't even listed on the County Democrats site. I only knew how to find their campaign pages because I've spent the last 2 years doing this research. That information didn't fall into my lap. No one knocked on my door or mailed me a brochure. It took sustained effort and some luck to track it down. To be fair, Carolyn Rush's About Me section is reasonably good. It explains her career, her work challenging the countywide ballot system, and some of her other ideas. But her platform is still just a list of topics with no detail, even after we discussed this months ago. Carol Sabo has a clear story about her time as mayor of West Cape May, but still hasn't provided a detailed agenda either, despite multiple follow-ups. And here's something I want to make absolutely clear. I don't care whether that information is created through my platform or not. If candidates want to create robust content elsewhere, I'll happily link it and help distribute it. This isn't about getting attention, it's about making sure voters have an honest place to start. But if no one else is creating that content, then I'm effectively forced to build my platform because the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and voters deserve clear, consolidated information. The vision for Inform the Vote NJ has always been simple. A hub where you can spend maybe an hour or two before Election Day comprehensively reviewing your options, then show up to a meet and greet or a debate. That's it. I'm not here to make up anyone's mind. I'm here so you don't have to spend months figuring out who's on the ballot. And if you want an example of why this matters, just look at reproductive rights in New Jersey. When I spoke with Carolyn Rush, she confirmed current law allows abortion at any point in a pregnancy without requiring justification. Personally, she's comfortable with that, though if pressed, she'd support a 24-week cutoff with exceptions for life of the mother and viability of the baby, with the final decisions left to a doctor and the patient. Some people will find that balance. Others will find it unacceptable, but at least she was willing to say it directly. Contrast that with the broader noise. Not long ago, I saw an ad from Mikey Sherrill claiming Jack Ciattarelli will support an abortion ban. I looked into that. Unless I'm missing something major, that claim is misleading. Ciattarelli laid out a 5-point position: prohibiting elective abortions after 20 weeks, supporting parental notification for minors, opposing taxpayer funding, and opposing abortion up to birth. You don't have to agree with him, but that is not the same as a total ban. And yet here we are with major campaigns flattening everything into black and white narratives, leaving voters to figure out whose version is closer to reality. This is why I believe candidates need to be clear and specific. Because when every disagreement is presented as an existential threat, people disengage. So why am I telling you all this before we start? Because it explains why tonight's conversation will be more of an introduction. This isn't going to be a cross-examination or an ambush. It takes time to build trust, and that's okay. Tonight, we're going to keep it straightforward. 1. Introductions. Who are you? Why did you get into public service? What else do you do besides politics? 2. General campaign messaging. What do you want voters to know at a high level as campaign season starts? 3. Your thoughts on 3 of my advocacy ideas: bringing civics back into schools, creating a county-facilitated information hub, and rebuilding the local press. That's it. No traps, no gotchas, just a genuine conversation to help everyone get a sense of who Antoine is and a general idea of his campaign. But I want to be clear. This is only the beginning. Later in the summer, when the messaging becomes clearer, we'll sit down for a longer form podcast to dig into specifics. Because if we expect voters to care, we need to respect them enough to share the details. And if being informed requires you to spend dozens of hours piecing everything together, we're not empowering citizens, we're exhausting them. So with that, let's invite our guest, Assemblyman McClellan, to call in. Apparently, he has not yet, so I'll just riff a little bit. Antoine, as per the CCRRO website, has a background in city council in Ocean City, but I don't want to riff too much about that before he calls in. I'd like to focus more about what general campaign messaging is from candidates, because that's a little bit more directly helpful for voters when they make their final decisions. So, to kind of get the conversation going and set the tone before he calls in, let's start with the first sentence on the CCRR website about where Antoine and his ticket mate stand in their general campaign messaging. That first sentence on the page reads, "Standing up against the executive overreach of Governor Murphy and the Democrats' increasingly radical agenda in Trenton. So, from somebody who would be new to local politics, or maybe just doesn't pay attention all the time, my first couple questions would be, what exactly is the executive overreach of Governor Murphy? You know, we could all make some speculations about what happened during COVID, excessively high taxes, or what's going on with the NJBPU at the moment. But that's just me riffing off the top of my head. When I tend to do this kind of research, I'd rather hear that explained from the candidate themselves. So, if I apply that same logic onto the next step of that sentence, the Democrats' increasingly radical agenda in Trenton. Well, sure. There's a lot of ideas that we could throw out there against the wall as general speculation. Lots of people have issues with policies like Policy 5756 that goes through the schools. Some people would call that radical. As mentioned in my introductory report, how far current law goes regarding reproductive rights, and where some Trenton Democrats have proposed to take it even further, some people would call that increasingly radical. But then again, you know, I'm not here to put words in anybody's mouth. I'm here to primarily provide a platform for the candidates to speak for themselves. So, that's one angle we could start with once he calls in. And then let's connect that to the recent election or primary nomination of New York City Democrat Zohran Mamdani. He is a Democratic Socialist of America, and if you go on their website, there are quite a few ideas about how the Democrat Socialists want to move forward, and how many moderates would consider that radical. And anybody following along with my blog posts on Facebook would know that I recently showed up to a local chapter meeting of the Democrat Socialists of America, where some of the things discussed would seem quite radical, as in directly advocating for a more socialist form of government, or showing up to law enforcement events and directly agitating things, as opposed to peacefully protesting, as was demonstrated the other week at the No Kings protest in Millville. So the point here that I'm trying to make is some of these things, like more socialist style candidates such as Zohran Mamdani, they're not just far off fringes. New York City is right across the border from us in northern Jersey, and now we have local chapters showing up here in Cumberland County. Are any of our local candidates identifying with that message? Because if Rashida Tlaib and Zohran Mamdani and a couple of people from Jersey City are actively in office or campaigning, how much longer would it be before these are direct options on our ballots here in Cumberland County? I'm not trying to directly associate anybody with that, but it is reasonable speculation. All right, moving on to the next sentence on the CCRRO website. We've got, it's time for the first district to put decades of broken Democrat promises behind us, restore fiscal sanity, and drain the Trenton swamp. So, in terms of general messaging, again, there's lots of speculation we could glean from that sentence, but let's just ask some direct, critical thinking style questions. What exactly are the broken promises from the Democrats? Looks like Antoine may be calling in. Let's see. I'll give it 1 second. Caller, you're on the air.
Oh.
Hello?
Hello, this is Antoine McClellan.
Hey, Antoine, how you doing?
How about yourself?
I'm good. Thanks for calling in. I know you guys are busy.
Yeah, not a problem. Sorry for the delay.
Yeah. So, how you doing today?
I'm good. No complaints. Just trucking along.
Yeah, me too. I basically got up, did a little exercising, reviewed my notes for today, and now I'm sitting in the nice, cool, air-conditioned studio.
I love it. Yes.
Yeah.
There's hot out there.
Yeah. Did you do anything special today?
No, just worked. That's it.
Oh, okay. But
Yeah.
does that mean you were out in Trenton?
No, we're actually done. So we the budget was yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So we voted, and that went through, unfortunately, and then so we are on break probably until at least September, October, but maybe through the election in November.
Oh, okay. You know what? That kind of brings up an interesting point that maybe the audience needs to be reminded about. It sounds like your work in Trenton is not your day job. So, do you want to elaborate on like what it is, whatever other work it is that you do?
Sure, absolutely. My adult job, like I like to say, is I work for the Cape May County Sheriff's Office.
Oh, okay.
So I'm the personnel director and chief of staff for Sheriff Robert Nolan.
Okay, cool. That's a interesting angle or detail to bring up, because I guess doing what it is that I do, trying to pay attention and gather information, get details, a lot of times people don't realize or fully appreciate that, you know, the public service job is not always the main focus for elected representatives, and sometimes it's healthy to remind people that you shouldn't be overly critical of people who are trying to serve. You know, it's easy to point fingers and all that, but sometimes I feel like you guys don't get enough appreciation.
Well, thank you for that. And we all, let me not say we all, I know a majority of us have day jobs in the state house. So it's not our full-time job, and some are retired, which are fortunate enough to do that, but a majority of people are still working. So they have that 9 to 5 that they have to do, and or own their own business, and then make time to be legislators and make sure we answer the call for those that have elected us and put us in office.
Absolutely, and also have enough time to be normal human beings too.
Yeah, that happens every now and then.
Okay, so a lot of what I want to take for today, as I mentioned in my introductory report, this is a little bit more of an introduction for the audience, especially like my audience. I would assume a lot of the people who would be following along with me don't know all that much about you. So, I mean, do you have, I guess, like an elevator pitch or a story or something that you usually do to introduce yourself to new constituents?
Sure, absolutely. So, my name is Antoine McClellan. I'm from the America's Greatest Family Resort, which is Ocean City, New Jersey.
Yeah.
I was born and raised. I graduated from there in Ocean City High School in 1993. I went on to school. I started at Virginia State, and then I went on to Old Dominion after that. So after that, I worked for the Sands Hotel and Casino. I worked there for 10 years as a slot supervisor. I left there and went on to a law firm called Slater, Tenaglia, Fritz & Hunt in Ocean City. I worked there for 10 years, and then Superstorm Sandy hit in 2012. They closed the office and they moved up towards North Jersey. And at that time, I was on Ocean City Council, and I was living and had my life in Ocean City, so I did not want to move to North Jersey. I was able to get a job with the county in the purchasing department. One of my departments was the sheriff's division. The sheriff saw he wasn't the sheriff then; he was the undersheriff, and he liked the way I worked and knew he was going to become sheriff. And he asked me if I would want to come over and run his personnel department. And I was doing that. Then he made me the chief of staff. After a couple of years, he was happy with the job I was doing. As far as my political life, I was on the Ocean City School Board from 2010 to 2012. 2012, I became a city councilman. And then in 2019, I ran for assembly. And here I am looking for my fourth term.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, another interesting aspect about that from somebody like myself who's been trying to get more involved, you've probably seen me out at the bi-weekly Republican breakfast and some county events and all that kind of stuff. And you personally, or just any of the local politicians, they don't always get an extended time to introduce themselves and really make it clear in plain speak, I guess you could say, how extensive their background is. I can tell by just seeing you around and hearing you speak every once in a while, like, you're a pretty cool guy and you have some experience, but like, you really laid out a resume.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's important because sometimes people get all kinds of weird impressions in their head. I think I saw somebody say something about you and McClellan, you and Simonsen earlier today that was not very nice. And it's just, just by you laying out that resume plainly for the audience, it's like, don't believe everything you hear on Facebook with people just running their mouths. It's like, you've heard in less than 2 minutes that Assemblyman McClellan clearly has a good resume. So any of the offhand comments, always take those with a grain of salt.
Yeah, and I try not to pay any attention to those keyboard warriors, as I like to say. People don't know you. They get behind a keyboard and they think they can, say whatever they want to say, but they will not say it to your face. Right. Everybody has a right to their opinion. I wish they would come and talk to me and ask me, why I feel the way I do or vote the way I vote, and we can have an adult discussion. But don't run to Facebook or social media to talk trash when you don't want to have a conversation with somebody.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. And to keep it light for a minute, I also see, were you a basketball coach for a while?
Yes, I coached girls basketball. It was 7th and 8th grade girls basketball for 15 years.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, so I had to finally step down with this. The assembly stuff got too busy, and I couldn't make the time to spend the time coaching. But yeah, I did it for 15 years, and I know I'm getting old because I see, some of the girls that I coached have graduated college and having their own lives, and so it's scary to see them out, and they call you Coach Antoine, and they have babies. So it's like, wow.
Yep. Time flies.
Yes, time definitely flies, but I do miss that. But it was a good time. I enjoyed that.
Did you play when you were young?
Yes, so I played basketball, football, and ran track through school.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, and I still kind of play a little bit when I get the time, but I know I'm old because I feel it after every time I play. So
yeah.
It's kind of more fewer and far between because the pain the next day is not worth it to me.
Oh, right. I hear that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, to sort of, relate on my end, I used to play basketball growing up, and I would never see myself as a basketball coach. But similarly, I played a lot of guitar growing up, and I was always more of the type of person who liked to do things as opposed to teach or whatever. Right. But then when I graduated college, I got a job teaching guitar at a local music shop, and it gives you a whole other perspective on things, like how much you kind of have to coach and show people things that you might have already thought they would know, or that they might pick up faster than you would expect. And I think that's part of what led me down this path, as in coming into local politics, it took a long time to kind of piece together the information. And so I guess the teacher in me kind of wants to like help consolidate the process for my neighbors and my family and all that kind of stuff. Like, hey guys, pay attention to local politics a little bit more, figure out who you're voting for. But I do recognize that it can be a daunting process. So hopefully this helps somebody somewhere.
Yeah, I hope so. And it's greatly, it is a daunting task. But we need more people to be involved in the process. We need more people to know what the process is, more importantly. And I think that's the most important thing. People don't know the civics aspect of it at all. It's not being taught in school for the most part, and people are not understanding it. And hopefully we can get back to that as well. And get some young people involved.
Right. So, actually, I'll bring that topic up later, but I want to make sure that we get into your general campaign messaging because, I'm sure we could talk off the cuff and relaxed for hours if we really wanted to, but, I want to make sure that by the time November rolls around, people really do have a comprehensive picture of what their choices are. So, kind of like I framed it or set it up for you with just introducing yourself, do you have some type of elevator pitch or general messaging that you kind of want to just lay out there for the audience for your campaign this coming season?
Well, sure. So, I'm myself, Assemblyman Simonsen, and Senator Testa are all about South Jersey. And the fact that we represent all of Cape May County, most of Cumberland County, and a little bit of Atlantic County is a blessing to us because all three of us were born in the areas that we represent. With the Senator being born in Vineland and a Cumberland County boy through and through, Assemblyman Simonsen being born in Lower being born in Cape May and raised in Lower Cape May, and myself in Ocean City, we triangle that supports our district. And it's important that we represent the lives and interests of our beaches and bay shore community, and even those cities and farms, and our tourism districts are very important to us. The schools, and to make sure our children get the proper education, through high school and through our community colleges, and maybe on to some of the local colleges like Stockton and Stockton and Rowan, is important to us. And we want to make sure that our biggest and brightest kids are coming back to our communities. And whatever we can do to incentivize the industries around here, whether it be tourism and gaming, whether it be, manufacturing, whether it be fishing, and those are the most important things around here, and also support our municipalities. Make sure they're able to thrive and what happens in our communities, not just during the summer, but we've become, a year-round activity around here, what we can do and how many people like to come and visit and play. And we respect that, and we want to make sure that Trenton recognizes that, which they haven't. But when we got there, and Senator Testa got there in 19, Assemblyman Simonsen and myself took over in 2020, we were able to make sure that nobody forgets about the real South Jersey anymore. And that will never happen as long as we're in office, and we're going to continue to fight and do what we can to make sure we support our district. And if it resonates through the rest of the state, that's great. We've been able to, team up with our District 2 mates and our District 4 mates, and hopefully we can get District 3 back. And we go forward from there and try to figure out what we can do to make sure what's best for our community and South Jersey as a whole.
Yeah, I hear a lot of that resonating with myself because as I've been looking around, like you said, we're sort of the forgotten county, and we do have our struggles around here, and sometimes some of our specific problems aren't directly addressed, and maybe in a different format we could dive deeper into each little specific problem, whether it deals directly with like homelessness or economic development or what have you. But the other aspect of that is we've got three guys who are from the area, been here their whole lives, and are really trying to bring that often forgotten South Jersey voice to Trenton and make sure that we get our fair share of attention, just like Central and North Jersey do.
Correct. And we have a lot of South Jersey strong values with our small businesses and our economy and the family, and we just want to make sure that that's being supported and fought for in Trenton.
You still there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, it just cut out a little bit, so I didn't hear the end of your sentence.
We just want to make sure that we continue to fight for our stuff down here in Trenton.
Okay, cool. So then, just to elaborate, I'm not going to go super deep into everything, but I have some thoughts about reading over some of the messaging on the CCRRO website. So, the first sentence up on the site is standing up to the executive overreach of Governor Murphy and the Democrats' increasingly radical agenda in Trenton. Could you just elaborate on that? Because, like, for somebody like me, especially when I started doing all this 2 years ago, I kind of know what you mean by that, and I could speculate, but the last thing I want to do is put words in your mouth and then be part of the unnecessary rumor mill that goes on. So if you would be so kind to sort of elaborate what that means in your own words.
Well, as far as government overreach is, and it's like anything, is we like to live our lives. Government is supposed to be there to help and not control or overburden the taxpayers. So when we say overreach, is like you overtax, like they're doing with this new budget. So they're putting more taxes on cigarettes, more taxes on alcohol, more taxes on gambling, and that's not right. Why are we continuing to overtax? You can't continue to overtax and overspend and expect everything to balance out. And so we don't want you to overtax us and tax things that we need to try to survive. And not saying that cigarettes and alcohol is what you need to survive, but we have the highest, one of the highest property taxes in the nation.
Right.
So you continue to tax us, and we're getting less and less for it. And you're causing us to work harder and harder for it. And people are fighting. So our schools are not getting the proper funding. And that's a major issue. So what are we going to do to get our schools right? They selectively pay certain counties school funding, and they don't pay the entire state when they absolutely could have done that years ago when they had the complete dollars to do it, and we had legislation to support that. So we continue to pick winners and losers, and they're doing that here. So let's support our counties and our municipalities instead of taxing them and not allowing them to thrive, and then having the state pay for buildings that don't need to be built when they could rightfully, put that back in the pocket of taxpayers. And Senator Tessa always says, there's a lot of justice issues. What about taxpayer justice? And when are we going to celebrate the taxpayer justice and take care of the taxpayers?
Sure, and kind of piggyback off that, a random thought that ran through my head is sometimes what people in North Jersey can afford is not exactly what people in South Jersey would afford. Would you say there would be a fair relation to what you just said and that idea?
Oh, 100%. It's not to say we should be separate, but it's two totally different states, two totally different ways of life from North Jersey to South Jersey. And there needs to be more of a commitment to South Jersey. The amount of dollars that we send up to Trenton and we don't get back. Right. Everything continues to go up to North Jersey and those northern parts of the state, and there's nothing that's gotten back. They have a higher population, which is fine, but tax dollars are coming from down here. So why don't you reinvest into our farms? The farmlands in Cumberland County are beautiful and need to be celebrated, and we need to encourage that. And not just encourage, building a city hall in Newark or something like that. That just allow them to pay for their own.
The French Museum.
For their own.
Sorry, the French Museum thing.
The French Museum. That's a whole nother issue all into itself.
Right.
Why are we building a French Museum in North Jersey?
I have no idea.
And why are we subsidizing that?
Yep. Cool.
And nobody's going to it.
Yeah. No. It's totally clear to me. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just the way I'm wired, but and it's probably how most conservatives are wired. It's you prioritize where your money goes, and as soon as you hear something like a French Museum, you're just like, we've got a homeless population down here, and we've got struggling schools. It's almost absurd to think about something like a French Museum.
Right.
So then, how about that second half of the sentence? Democrats' increasingly radical agenda in Trenton. Now, in my introductory report and riffing, I made some speculations, but again, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Could you help elucidate what that means?
So radical agendas is kind of like what we kind of addressed. They're increasing our taxes. They are building French museums. They are putting through stuff that puts more burden on the working class folks of this state. And why are they over-regulating us? Continue to have more and more regulations, and there's nothing that's coming from it. And they have an agenda that they put through because they're in a majority office, and they don't care. So now at this point, we have a $59 billion budget that the governor just threw out there, and he's not going to worry about, next year because he's out of office. So the taxpayers are going to continue to have to forfeit the bill for this. And their agenda is not, taxpayer or constituent friendly or South Jersey friendly. So what are we going to do to try to work towards getting a better New Jersey and to keeping our best and brightest from leaving, and then also protecting our seniors and trying to protect those that have mental health, trying to support our hospitals. And those are the type of things that we should be concentrating on instead of trying to align the pockets of special individuals to try to gain votes in certain districts.
Gotcha. Cool. So then let's move on to the next part of that campaign messaging. It says, it's time for the first district to put decades of broken Democrat promises behind us, restore fiscal sanity, and drain the Trenton swamp. Now, we've obviously discussed fiscal sanity in depth already. Could you give some examples of what Democrat broken promises would be?
Broken promises. So we can start with Route 55 that runs Cumberland County through into Cape May County.
Mm-hmm.
So that should have been taken care of. There should be a safety evacuation route that can get us from the shore up to mainland in case of a hurricane or things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
And Route 55 is not finished. So if anybody travels Route 55, at a certain point it cuts off. So you're going from a 4-lane highway where you're running 65 to 70 miles an hour to a 2-lane highway where you got to drop down to probably like 40 or 50.
Yeah, I know that spot.
Traffic, and it's below a flood zone. So people can't safely evacuate. It doesn't give us any type of a room for more industry that could come in. So that needs to be completed and addressed. So that's a broken promise that it needs to be met. There needs to be more of an investment in our Bay Shore area. We have things like the lighthouse in Cumberland County that needs to be addressed.
Mm-hmm.
And protected. And then they're trying to, with the DEP, they're trying to put these NJ real rules in effect, which is going to raise the base flood elevation that the federal government hasn't even discussed yet. But the DEP thinks that they need to raise the flood elevation another 15 to 20 feet for our Bay Shore and our shore community. So now you have a house they require an elevator for those that had Sandy and raised their homes, and in our districts, they may have to raise it another 5 to 10 feet. And those that are more inland, like we can say like a Middle Township or certain parts of Cumberland County where the Bay Shore is, they never had flood insurance. They're going to have to raise their house as well because of a fear of a 100-year storm that may or may not happen. So, in those meetings that we went to, people were saying that nobody should be living along the bay or along the coast. That should be made for animals and wildlife.
Mm.
So those are the type of things that need to be discussed. And and that's a tax base. So you're changing the tax base for municipalities and counties in this state, and you're not going to be able to recover those dollars.
Right, and that sounds like some of the issues specific to Cumberland County. It's almost like it kind of like it doesn't matter who's breaking the promise. I mean, it does matter, but once something becomes just something that should have been done, but it gets, I don't know, kicked down the road, brushed under the rug, however you want to phrase it, for years or decades, everybody just starts to get frustrated, and we're just like, we just need this done.
And that's infrastructure as well. We need, roads and bridges they definitely need to be repaired and upgraded. So there's a lot of things that need to be done that are missing and not being considered by the folks of Trenton that we will try to continue to fight for.
Cool. So, yeah, I appreciate the sound of that. We definitely need people fighting the good fight because, by my estimation, there are definitely things being kicked down the road. So, again, I appreciate that. And since we've got about 15 minutes left, I want to move on to this other section that I want to get your take on some advocacy ideas that I've come up with over the past couple years doing this local politics thing from my information angle. So the first idea I have is trying to either introduce or reintroduce not only civics, but local civics into school curriculum. Because from my standpoint, I remember the first several weeks that I started doing this, I showed up and I was trying to ask a county surrogate question, or a candidate questions about what his campaign messaging was, and it just kind of struck me like I'm playing catch up, trying to ask somebody who's been in politics their whole life basic questions about, like, well, what is a county surrogate, and how do you how is your specific messaging, or how does party politics play into what a county surrogate does? And so that's just like one example of, if our children aren't sort of like deeply knowledgeable about what even goes on in local politics, how are they even going to cast a confident vote?
Right. It's a major thing, and that's why it's important to have civics back in the school. And I know myself, Assemblyman Simonsen, and Senator Testa, as often as we can, we're in the schools reading to the kids, talking to them about what we do, inviting them to the State House. And I think that needs to happen more. And I know even Congressman Mandrew has invited, kids and families up to D.C. to tour the Washington, D.C. and the President's Mansion and all that in the White House and things of that nature in his chambers. So we need to engage more kids in what we do, so they have an understanding. I don't know your age, but I remember as a kid, you would see the show What is a Bill? Yeah. And the bill would come out, and then it would tell you about the bill and how to create a bill, and that's important. Yeah. And people need to know that on the school board level, on a municipal level with their county council, their city council or city commissioners, their mayor, and the county commissioners, and what their state legislators do and what their federal legislators do, and how that progresses. So to know what's going on in D.C. and how that affects New Jersey, and what we do in New Jersey affects our counties, and what our county people do affects their municipalities. So and so on and so forth. And even with the school board, how important the school board is, mm-hmm. and the function that they play in our day-to-day lives. I think those things are very important, and we should not get away from teaching our kids that. And, I didn't know what a surrogate really did. And then I was able to kind of figure that out and go forward from there to figure out what the surrogate does and what our county clerk does and how important they are to our election process. So those types of things, I think, need to be elevated, and people have a full understanding of what goes on with that.
Yeah, I hate to press a little bit forward on that because it sounds like you're on board, but just to re-ask a direct question. So you'd be in favor of having civics reintroduced into school curriculum as like part of like a mandatory curriculum?
100%. Yes.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to clarify.
Yes.
And then moving on to the second idea that I have is, I've been doing a lot of, what do you call it, grassroots level work, trying to make my little website, get this radio show, all this kind of stuff. But I think a lot of what I do, at least conceptually, could be facilitated at a county government level. As in, part of the reason why I'm doing this, I believe, is because the local press collapsed. The Vineland Daily Journal used to do write-ups on all the candidates and stuff, but now they're not doing that anymore. So we can't necessarily count on the local press to do that work. So would it be fair to introduce at the county level, like when candidates hand in their signatures, the clerks just hand them information packets or questionnaires that the candidates could fill out, and then when the information is turned into the clerk, there's just some neutral, nonpartisan website that people can access so that there's at least a default baseline of information about who the candidates are and where they stand.
So your question is, would I be in favor of that?
Yeah.
It's possible. My concern is the amount of work and the cost that it takes to do that. We talked about that. I was on the ballot design committee.
Yeah.
So I did some work on that, and I heard people talking about that. And I think there might be room for a further conversation about that. It's the expense, and we have to be careful at how much we're charging, or how much we're doing, and the expense is going to be on county clerks and their budgets.
Right.
And if the state's going to be willing to pay that. So I don't know what that book looks like. Is that book in color? How many columns is in the book? Who's in that book? And for those that are having multiple elections in a year, how much does that cost?
Right.
So we have to be careful with that. I'm all about them having, the voters having more information about us, but how we get it out there in a meaningful way that's not cost effective to our municipalities and to our counties that are handling the votes. So I think it might be something willing to be talked about. But when we do stuff, we need to include those people that have to implement it. And I noticed that was kind of a problem that we had when we were traveling up and down the state for the ballot design committee. Is that some people listened, some people didn't, but there's an implementation process that needs to happen, and we need to talk to those people that got to implement it. So I could be for it, but I would love to talk to the county clerks about it and then see what the cost would be.
Sure. And then if it winds up being not cost effective and shot down effectively, that could turn into my argument for monetizing what it is that I do.
Yeah, very true. It could be, and there's ways to do it, because there's a lot of during our election process, there's a lot of people that we have to meet with and talk to try to get support from. And maybe that's something that they can work on or try to talk about or getting it done when they do endorsements and things of that nature. But I know that's kind of it goes to certain people. But there's ways to try to get that out there, or maybe even something that can happen in the newspapers. Maybe that goes out that way in your local newspapers and on digital, as far as that's concerned. And figure that out.
Yeah, cool. And then my last idea would be, even if we had something at the county level that did default level information, we would still probably need a robust local press to do all of the professional level, diligent, comprehensive coverage. As in, anybody can fill out a questionnaire at the beginning of a campaign season, but as a campaign develops, challengers put out their messages, and then there's back and forth, and then there's new legislation that pops up, and all new issues that pop up, and all that kind of stuff. So we would need people to do analyses, prepare interviews, and all that kind of stuff. So would you generally be in favor of some type of program to rebuild the local press?
Oh, 100%. The press is very important, local press. And I don't know if you're old enough to remember when there was like News Channel 40. And we had that down here, which was a local TV station. So they covered everything local here in Cape May County, Atlantic County, and Cumberland County, and a couple other spots in South Jersey like Salem and stuff like that. But it was our local news station. And we need more of that as opposed to just kind of dealing with the Philly news station. And we kind of come sometimes get some of their stuff. And even North Jersey, I know they deal with the New York news station. So I think local press is important. You can develop relationships with those people that are in the press. And I would love to have a local station back and local radio. And I think that's what we need to continue to do, and we should be supporting that.
Cool. Yeah. So sounds like we're generally on the same page with all those things. We've only got a couple minutes left. Is there anything you feel like you'd like to say last minute that we maybe haven't covered?
Nothing really. Just, myself, Assemblyman Simonsen, and even though Senator Tester's not on the ballot this year, we're out there. We're always available. We have a legislative office in Vineland. We also have one in Cape May Courthouse to make sure we handle both sides of the county. So please reach out to us if you have any problems with the DMV, with your unemployment, with any type of state issues, and we can also get you in touch with Congressman Van Drew's office for any federal issues. So we do a lot of stuff in our communities, and we'll be out and about this summer as well, making sure that we're around and touching everybody that we can.
Yeah, I actually would like to piggyback off of that general statement. As in, when I first started doing all this, it was really difficult for me to find information, but as I've gotten more connected, like I follow Testa, you, Simonsen, and other people on social media, I see the posts are there, they're more present. What I really liked was, especially talking about the local newspapers and all that. When I was at the Lawrence Township meet and greet, I saw I assume it was a newsletter from the LD1 office. Mm-hmm. And that was cool. That was like, okay, I can see, like, these are the bills that you guys not only are introducing, but these are the ones you'd like me to pay attention to, because sometimes I feel like when I'm doing this type of stuff, it's easy to get overwhelmed and distracted, and you go down random rabbit holes, and it's really helpful to be like, read these 3 bills because these 3 bills are important for this quarter. And it's like, oh, okay, cool, that's what you want me to pay attention to. And then I can, spend half an hour reading those bills and doing extra research on it if I feel like it, as opposed to endlessly being pointed in infinite directions. So, I just wanted to give a shout out to that.
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, and we try hard to make sure we get that information out and stay committed to the public. They know they can get us at any time.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I don't know if maybe somebody wants to call in for the next minute or two, but I feel like if you and I talk anymore, it's just going to be filling dead air. Which I can do.
Well, it was great to talk to you, and I'm glad that you got the better Assemblyman completely by itself.
Oh, right. Is that because you're better at basketball than him?
I'm better at everything than him.
I don't know. So, I think, do you play guitar?
No, I'm sorry. No, I cannot sing or play guitar like he can. So he definitely has that up on me, without a doubt, 100%. And he used to be a heck of a wrestler as well.
Oh, really?
So yes. He was a heck of an athlete in college. I didn't wrestle. He did wrestle, and he's famous man. So that's good. He just retired as a teacher. So. Oh,
right. I still haven't heard him play yet. That's something I've been meaning to do, because I used to be a guitar player, and I see some of his posts. Like, he still gigs a little bit, right?
Yeah, yes, he does. So I think he's playing tomorrow.
Oh, really?
If I'm not mistaken, I think he has a gig tomorrow in Cape May at the Barefoot Bar.
Oh, so interesting.
So you keep an eye on his Facebook page. He'll tell you where he's at playing, and you got to get there to definitely see him. It's entertaining, and he does a good job. But don't tell him I said that in public.
Little playful competition among the LD1 officials.
Absolutely.
All right, well, how much time? We got 1 minute left. I'm not going to keep you on the phone. Thank you very much for calling in. I really appreciate it. I know you guys are super busy. You're all over the place. So, again, thank you for taking the time and helping consolidate the choices based on information directly from the candidate.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me, and hopefully I'll see you out, if not at a breakfast or out in the street somewhere soon at another event. You take care, stay safe, and enjoy the summer weather.
You too, man. Have a good one.
You do the same. Bye.
All right, everybody. That was Assemblyman Antoine McClellan. He's up for re-election with Assemblyman Eric Simonsen. And this has been Inform the Vote NJ Radio Hour on Cruising 92.1 WVLT in Vineland. And I will see you next week.
Want to know the secret to what makes Rita's Water Ice so delicious? Did you know that Rita makes their ice fresh every day with